I am Diane White-Clayton. I am the daughter of Reverend Lehman White and Mrs. Catherine White. The most wonderful parents. They both are in heaven right now, probably looking down and telling everybody to come watch their daughter. I am the granddaughter of Winslow Arnold and Lydia Arnold. This is on my mom's side. My grandfather was the first African-American regional insurance salesman in the area where he was very successful and bought 10 acres of land at a time when that just wasn't happening in Virginia, about 50 miles south of DC. I'm also the granddaughter of Capers White and Rebecca White. My grandfather, Capers, was a bit older than my grandmother. This is on my dad's side, and he actually was a slave, which is really shocking when people go like, what? I'm actually a granddaughter of a slave. He died a free man, but he was born into slavery, and his mother, was what's called a breeder in the context of slavery. So breeders usually were beautiful and strong women that were just set up to breed, just like animals. And so I'm the great-granddaughter of Amelia, that was her name. And to that end, I know that I stand on a great legacy. I have a great heritage in terms of who God has put me together to be. And so I'm all of that, which means I'm a person that grew up with a lot of faith. My dad was a pastor, a Baptist preacher in Washington, D.C. And the love that was in my home was just inexplicable. I am also a sister. I have 5 siblings. I have 4 sisters and 1 brother. I'm next to the baby. My sisters, oh my gosh, they are my best friends. We don't know about sibling rivalry, about jealousy, anything like that. Anybody who's doing anything, we're all supporting that person 1,000%. I had an environment that was very nurturing. Traditionally speaking, the African American church is pretty much everything in terms of the history of Black people in America. It's the place where schools often were. It was the schoolhouse. It was the social hall. It was, and now I'm speaking historically, not so much for me, but it was the place where certainly political meetings were held. You know, when you think about the civil rights movement, it was the place where classical piano recitals were held for when the ladies had the afternoon tea, because oftentimes African Americans did not have access to other venues. So when you think about that heritage and then you continue years beyond that, it still is this great this great place, this cocoon almost, this place where you get to grow. So my music got to develop in this very nurturing environment. Music permeated my household. All of my siblings are musical. My parents are both musical, never did music as anything formal. My mom played the piano and she sang. My dad could play, I think it was Bo Weevil Blues. He had that one song, you know, and he had a very beautiful voice, but neither of them would have ever classified themselves as musicians. I began composing at the age of 11. I was the director of the Sunday school choir, which consisted of about 9 young people initially, and then soon after that, 12. I think they ranged from the age of about 9 to my age, 11. I was the oldest, but just by a hair. And yet I was an old soul, so I was definitely the boss, let's say. But the first song I wrote was a song called Take My Life and Let It Be. I used the actual hymn, the lyrics from the hymn, but I completely changed it. It was just this cute little, well, I say cute, but I guess I'm biased. But anyway, it was like, take my life and let it be consecrated, Lord, to thee. So it was just this really cute little song, and they did wonderfully. And from there, I just kept writing. I never started out saying, oh, I want to write a song or I want to be a songwriter. It just happened. Composing usually for me happened in the earlier years and still does now out of a practical need for a song for something. So I'll be getting ready for a workshop or getting ready for a service or a concert or a play, and I can't find the song I need. And so I'm just like, okay, I'm running out of time, so let me just write something. So that's how it started for me, and it still goes on that way. And a large majority of my music is vocal. It's pretty much solo works or even more so choral. The majority is for choir and piano because that's usually what I'm doing, playing for a choir. I have been so blessed to be the director of the gospel choir at Loyola. And as a professor teaching that class, the gospel choir class, my desire is for students to walk into a world of discovery that they've never known. Most of my students, that is the case because most of them have no background in gospel music. And many times we have preconceived notions of what gospel is. And that depends on how old the person is. You know, some older people just think it's, oh, happy day. And that is gospel for sure, but there's so much more to it. And I think for younger people, the college age students that I teach, they often don't understand the importance of gospel music in terms of the history of American music. American music would not be what it is if gospel music did not exist. The blues, R&B, jazz, rock music, all of those musics developed as a result of this great genre that came about from spirituals, which were developed in slavery. So spirituals were the sacred songs that were written during slavery, work songs, the secular songs. You marry them and you later get blues and you get gospel. In the earlier years of gospel, like the 60s, 70s, you can find story after story where A&R reps would go to churches to recruit singers, recruit African-American singers for their latest record deal. I mean, every well-known early pop singer was found in church, African-American singer. So the Jackson 5 started in church, Whitney Houston, Aretha. I mean, the list is on and on and on. It's very rare that you find an earlier African-American artist, secular artist, that did not have roots in gospel music. So they didn't just all of a sudden stop everything that they were doing as gospel musicians and then start singing secular music. They brought that same approach into the musics that they were doing. I want my students to learn many things. One is the importance of the music as a genre. On the other hand, I also want students to understand that this is a music of inclusion. It's a music that you can sing no matter what background you are from. And I believe that with any style music, it's a matter of learning the style. But many times people will see gospel music as, oh, that's music that Black people sing and I can't sing it because I don't have rhythm or I don't know how to sing like that. Well, it doesn't have anything to do with the genes, as I tell people, because a lot of Black people can't sing gospel music. It has to do with a style that you learn. I lastly want them to learn that God loves them. And I want them to know that church or God or whatever their image is of Jesus, it's not something that's way out there. It's something that's right here. God is just like as close as the skin on my face. And when we breathe in and exhale this music, it's like we're breathing in the presence of God. There are so many times when I've done things and I'm just like, Lord, I don't know why did I say yes to this? I have no clue of what I'm doing here. And I get in that position and I realize wow, God, I really need you. So I may just close the door of my office and go to my knees and just be like, help, God, or crying or whatever. And then I come out, ding, and nobody ever knows but the Lord. And it doesn't mean that the fear is all gone. I love, there's a Bible verse that said, I sought the Lord and he heard me and delivered me from all my fears. So I quote that scripture. I'm not yet delivered from all of my fears, but I know that there are times when I have been afraid and felt immobile, but with prayer and with just trying to get people who I know have the same vision, get them around me, get them praying for me too, then I just go forward. Sometimes I do it clumsily. Sometimes I make mistakes. Sometimes I make a lot of mistakes, but I just keep going. You know, I think a lot of people have an image of me that is very different than what is inside. They see a person that has accomplished a lot of things and done a lot, but it's not because it's been without fear, and it certainly hasn't been without struggle. I've struggled a lot, and I still do. I think that when we put ourselves in a box and when we don't allow ourselves to be blessed by our community, by our village, then we can fear can take over and just keep you locked up. Fear is of the devil. I do believe that. Fear is not of God, and Satan wants us to not be the glorious, incredible people that we really are. And so whatever Satan can do to keep us from believing that we are made in God's image and that we're absolutely incredible beings and capable of things that blow our minds, then Satan will do that. But we've got to believe the best about each other. And I like to inspire others, and others have really inspired me. So that's kind of how I do it. I do it scared, but with a lot of people blowing their wind underneath my wings. One of the great pleasures of my life, and one of the things that brings me deep joy, is my husband. And when I think about the familial support that I've had, I'm so thankful that God gave me a husband that was an extension of that support. My husband is a musician, and he had a hugely successful career. So that helps me because he understands the craziness of this brain of mine. He was a percussionist, still is a percussionist, but was a major Motown and R&B conga player, played for the Jackson 5 and Aretha, Marvin Gaye, and Barry White, and it's a long list that would take hours to say. My favorite story about him, when the Lion King was here several years ago, the first time, and the Broadway show, and he went up to one of the drummers, the principal drummer, to say, oh my goodness, you were outstanding, man, you just were awesome, and he's giving him all these kudos. And the guy looks at him and kind of squints, and he says, what's your name? And so my husband says, I'm Joe Clayton. And the guy gets a little emotional. He says, oh my goodness, many years ago, I was a little kid, maybe 7 or 8. I think he said 6, actually, no, 6. And he said, I saw you play at a park just with a few musicians. You guys were just kind of just having fun and just playing your congas. I went up to you and I asked you if I could play your congas, and you said, sure. You put your arm around me and you let me play, and you showed me a couple of beats. He said, that is the reason I started playing. And you're the reason. In my whole life, I was looking for you to tell you thank you. Oh, I'm getting emotional. He said, I was looking for you to tell you thank you, and now I get to see you. And so it all, they both are sitting there like I am now, just getting emotional. But that's the kind of person I married, and I'm so grateful. I certainly believe that all gifts come from God, and I'm very humbled and grateful that God has entrusted me, if I may use that word, entrusted me with these gifts that He's given me. And so I'm inspired by God. That sounds really lofty, but I really feel that I am. I believe there are certain times when I just think some things God just drops on me, and I just go like, whoa, and I'm writing, and I just am writing furiously and trying to just get it all out. Sit down, servant, sit down. There's something that is very powerful when you talk about a music that comes from a people who have been through all that African Americans have been through. A people that have the history of being ripped from a nation, ripped from their culture, ripped from families, and treated worse than animals, literally, for not just 10 years, 20 years, 100 years, but for hundreds of years. And then out of that, still beauty and life in the form of music. That is something pretty powerful. And that's what gospel music brings to people of whatever background. You can't make me doubt him. Oh, you can't make me doubt him. You can't make me doubt him in my heart. You can't make me doubt him, 'cause I know too much about him. You can't make me doubt him in my heart. Oh, I'm satisfied with Jesus. Satisfied with Jesus. Satisfied with Jesus in my heart. Oh, I'm satisfied with Jesus. Yes, satisfied with Jesus. You can't make me doubt him. No, 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 too much about him. I said you can't make me doubt him in my heart. Oh, yes, in my heart.